open herself to spirit guides. I was talking to a lady in California, a Christian lady from Mexico, and her mother lived way out in no man's land, and no telephone, nothing. But she said, whenever my mother needs me, she calls me. What do you mean? No telephones? She would just know. She would just hear her mother's voice. And so she would get on a bus and go way out into the country of Mexico to be with her mother. And I kind of said to her, I said, I don't believe it's your mother calling you. I believe there's something of a demonic bondage working here. I said, this is not good, this is not right. And I tried to appeal to her. I had an aunt, not by blood, but she was my Auntie Wendy. She was a very good aunt to me. And one day her husband dropped dead at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the kitchen. It was interesting, she has 2 sons, or had 2 sons. And this is not a Christian family. One of her sons was working in the city and just knew that his father had died. Now he wasn't in bad health, there was no anticipation he was going to die. He was just in the city and just knew his father had died and went immediately home and found him dead on the kitchen floor. Not a Christian, and just knowing something. Wonder how he knew. But when I would stay with my auntie, every afternoon at 2 o'clock, I wouldn't be near the kitchen, because every afternoon Bob comes and spends time with me, her husband. He died in the kitchen at 2 o'clock, so every day at 2 o'clock she had a rendezvous with her husband, and she talked to him, and apparently he talked to her. Now, I wasn't a Christian in those days, so I didn't understand what was happening, and I couldn't speak into it. But what she thought was her husband was nothing but a deceiving spirit, an impersonating spirit. There was a link to an evil spirit. We have to be so careful what we get ourselves involved with. Well, what are some of the symptoms of an unhealthy soul tie? There can be the obsessive preoccupation with another, particularly in our thoughts. As this woman, formerly from Mexico, hearing another's voice, seeing another's face. Excessive parental influence and authority over married children. People desiring to control another. People intimidated or fearful of another. A person contacting similar diseases, sicknesses. The inability to truly forgive, and so the list goes on. How do we break an unhealthy soul tie? We need to repent of past and present sins, if there are sins that have created the soul tie. We need to renounce every curse resulting from the soul tie. And in the name of Jesus, we take authority over every spirit that's been given a place in our life because of that soul tie. I was watching the Olympic Games, the last 2 Summer Olympics, and as you may be aware, the American women's beach ball, volleyball, they won the gold medal the last 2 Olympic Games, maybe earlier, I don't know, but anyone see those matches? Okay. And what saddened me, this was I think 2 Olympic Games ago, there was the leader of that twosome talking to a reporter on television, and she was saying, I'm so glad that my mother was able to be here to see us win the gold medal. Now, wasn't that nice that her mother could be in the Olympic Games? You think that's a good idea? Was it nice? If it was possible? But she was there. She had a bottle with her mother's ashes. I guess up on the grandstand there, I can imagine that bottle, going from side to side. And here was a young woman. She was obviously very, very fit. She was attractive, She was in good shape physically. But my mother, some ashes in a bottle, her mother wasn't there. I felt so sad for her. Oh, there's a wrong time. She's never let her mother go. Now when a person dies, They're gone. But there's a sense in which we can hold on to them sometimes, and sometimes the years can go by and we hold on to them. I know a lady, she lives alone, and she was very, very close to her dog, and her dog died. And she couldn't afford it, but she had the dog cremated. And she had the ashes of the dog sitting on her dining room table. And I felt to speak to her one day because we were friends. I said, look, you need to scatter those ashes, get rid of those ashes. It's not healthy. This time you still have with that dog. Now, thank God for animals. I'm an animal lover, so I'm not speaking against having a cat or a dog, whatever. I used to. My wife said to me one day, Graham, you love the dog, and you love the cat, and you love your birds, and you love me. What's the difference? So now I like the cat, I like the dog, I like the birds, and I love my wife. So I'm an animal lover. I'm not against, having a good relationship. Animals can be such a blessing in our lives. But she had to let that little doggy go. And probably within a day or two, she heeded to what I was saying. She knew she should do it, and she scattered the ashes of that animal. There was a wrong tie. You follow what I'm saying? Not letting go of the past. Got to let it go. Got to let it go. First time I was in Mongolia, and I go to Mongolia every year, I prayed for a young man who was 26 years of age. 3 years early, he had become a Christian. As a little boy, he was placed in a monastery and came under the care of a lama. Not one of these, not one of those ones, but a monk. A monk. I think it was from the age of 6 to 23. He was fathered by this lama. Now, Buddhists don't believe in a God. They don't believe God created, they don't believe God sustains. So they don't believe in God. And they're very open to the demonic realm. I'm speaking here in Mongolia. And you can imagine what sort of influence he came under through the mentoring of that lama. So now he's a Christian. He's in a discipleship training school. And I prayed with him, and the Lord did some things, but he had been prayed for before I came along. And some of the Mongolian Christians were with him, praying deliverance for him, as he renounced every tie to Buddhism and every tie to that lama. You follow what I'm saying? As he did so, that lama suddenly just appeared in the room. Are you still with me? Now, the Western Christians did not see that lama. Now, whether it was the lama himself appearing or a spirit impersonating the lama, they said to me, we didn't see. But the Mongolian Christians in the room, they all saw this lama suddenly appear. As this man was renouncing every tie into Buddhism and to that lama who was like a spiritual father to him, that man or a spirit impersonating him appeared in the room as he got set free from demonic powers. Oh, I was involved in Buddhism for a few years. We in the West can be so spiritually blind. We don't realise the dangers of things that we do. I'll make a reference tomorrow probably to Hinduism. So many people in the West are involved in yoga. Yoga is an intricate part of Hinduism. And there's no such thing as Christian yoga. We may say so, but there's no such thing as Christian yoga. The very exercises have all to do with the Cobra spirit, the Kundalini spirit, and the various positions that give access, welcome a Cobra spirit into our life, going up the spine, coming in through the third eye to control people. And if you are involved in yoga, or just for physical purposes, you better quit. You really better quit. It's dangerous. Because you're opening yourself up to spiritual influences you may know nothing about. You can be joined to a wrong spirit through such things. Let me just tell you 2 more stories and then we'll go into a time of prayer. I was in a Bible school in Denmark, and I normally go there from a Sunday through to a Friday. It was Monday night. One of the students came forward and asked for prayer for deliverance. And I noticed she was wearing a belt, and I noticed on the belt was a ring. Don't normally see someone wearing a ring hanging on a belt. And I said, oh, what's that ring? Oh, she said, I became a Christian a year ago, but I was living with a drug dealer, and we were engaged. Now, the ring was a simple band, silver band. It wasn't expensive. And by the way, there was nothing evil about the ring. It was just a ring. But I just knew something of God, and I said, well, I will pray for you for deliverance, but only after you get rid of that ring. Because I knew that even though she had broken that relationship 1 year earlier and had no intention of going back, that ring was a symbol, something in my heart is still going back to that man. Well, you know, sometimes when God speaks to us through others, we don't really want to hear that. And so she tried to manipulate me day by day. She brought me a can of pop one day in the lunch hour. And another day we had a nice sort of ice cream, the ice creams and bowls, and we all had an ice cream, and there was one over. And because I was the guest at that table, they insisted I have the second ice cream, and I didn't want to offend people in their culture, so I had the second ice cream. Yeah. But this young lady, knowing that I liked ice cream, she brought me a third ice cream. She was trying to manipulate me to pray for her, you see. But I wouldn't fall for the bait. Anyway, the last night was Friday night. She came forward for prayer again, because she'd been coming each day. No, I'm sorry, I won't pray for you. And it's not for you or me to control people's lives. But when you know something in God, there's a time to say it in the right way, you know, and God's speaking through us. But Friday night, she came for prayer, and I felt a release to pray for her. And as I prayed, there was some big manifestation. She was thrown onto the front seats, and I had to get someone else. We had to hold her down, and she was being set free quite powerfully. But when I went back to my room that night, there on the door, something that had been placed there before the meeting, was a note. And on the note, the ring had been taken. She said, please take this ring away from this Bible school and throw it away. She said to me the next day, I didn't want to give it to anybody in the Bible school. It's too close. I just wanted it away from here. She had been willing to do what God was speaking to her to do. No wonder I felt free to pray for her that night. Now, I didn't throw the ring away. I gave it to somebody. It wasn't very valuable, I'm sure, but nothing evil with the ring. But for her, it represented a bondage. There was an ungodly soul tie there. Just one more story. I'm a preacher, and I'm saying one more story. My mother. Oh, where are you going with that story, right? My mother was a good woman. Active in her church life. It wasn't an evangelical church, but very committed. My father and mother helped people in the community. They were good people. Good people. But my mother was, oh, now this is very rare, so don't be shocked when I say this, but my mother was a controller. Sometimes the father can be a controller, but it was my mother. She was a controller. And her heart was so good, but she controlled out of fear. My mother was so full of fear every day. Oh, oh, oh. She was just motivated by fear, fear, fear. Control, control, control. Because my sister and I were adventurous, and this pressure, 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 I had to fight against all my growing up years. I left home at 17. My parents took me to the railway station. I got on a train, and I was joining the Merchant Navy, and I was strong. And as the train pulled out of the station, and my parents couldn't see me, I had a little